For most people here, it's home. You've made it back home. Wherever you've been, you're home again.
People think of it as a tourist attraction, the lights on just to have the community sense and everything else with it, but it's actually still an active age navigation. We had a lighthouse that was built out here in 1812. It was the first one, and it did an okay job, but it wasn't very good at warning ships. Oftentimes, they would have already hit the shoal by the time they saw the light there. So the one that you've seen today is the replacement for that, and it was completed in 1859.
Its function is the same today as it was back then. It was to warn people, ships going along the coast, away from the shallow areas. Basically, it was a marker that said, don't run into what I'm standing on. This lighthouse was completed just before the Civil War. It was the only one on this coast that looked like that. After the war, as they began to update other lighthouses, they used the same style. Now you've got triplets along this coast that look pretty much the same from a distance. How do you tell them apart? The paint patterns were chosen to tell you which lighthouse you were looking at.
The other thing that this particular one does, where those diamonds actually meet, those points where you have white and then black, is actually a compass of sorts. You have 2 points meeting, it points north. On the opposite side where those points meet, it points south, and obviously east and west on either side. So if you're really, really lost, you potentially could utilize that as well as an additional navigational aid.
It's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic for a good reason. The way the currents come in, the Gulf Stream and further up the Labrador Current coming together make for some very strong wave actions. Back when it was sailing ships, if you lost maneuvering room, you were aground. So yes, we are the Graveyard of the Atlantic because there's something like 5,000 ships from like around the Virginia line down to like the South Carolina line that are run aground, pushed ashore, or run afoul of bad weather. Whatever's happening out on the ocean hits that island and hopefully doesn't come across the island and into the Sound. We've had several hurricanes that have come right directly over top of us, direct hits. And the island being sand just absorbs it, or it readjusts and moves back, or lets it happen and then it readjusts again. That's one of the beauties of a sand island, is that it can do that. Early storms, they didn't look at how much damage it did on land, they looked at how many ships did it push ashore. And I've run across letters that talk about 20 ships aground.
The original 1812 lighthouse, it's kind of short and not very bright, which is not a good thing to hear about anything, but for a lighthouse it's about the worst possible characteristic combination you can have. So the one that you've seen today, seen kind of an evolution of the process of powering it over the years. The original power source is whale oil, which is exactly what it sounds like. They're utilizing the natural things that they have available. And then actually just very recently, in September of 2017, we switched over to a solar panel powered array and a new solar light.
First of all, they had to get the solar panels installed, but the light was still running off of the commercial line. Eventually, though, they connected it into the solar and did a symbolic throw the switch to get it over there, and we've been on solar ever since. But it was very needful. The old commercial power line, which had only been put in 1982, was on the verge of failing. The lighthouse has had different, what they call light characteristics over the years. We went through at least 2 or 3 different versions of what the light characteristic was. The one that was in between from 1979 up until this was put in was a rotating one. And what we've left it at is the old once every 15 seconds, but instead of turning, it is just flashing.
Think of people in canoes and kayaks and things that may be out there. And if you're in a kayak, all of a sudden you have some fog blow in or some rough weather, something like that. This may actually be the thing that gets you back to safety. One of the biggest shortcomings just in general is that there's a lot of people that just don't know what an awesome place this is. And I would love for more people to know that and for more people to come out here and enjoy it in all of the awesome ways that they can.
I actually asked some sailors on big ocean-going merchant ships, is this even necessary anymore? And what I got was, oh yes. And in some places we want more. Because what you have is a fixed point that you know is going to be there to find out where you're at. It's a marker of safety. It's a marker of home.